Can you connect chords to melodies? Melodies and chords are closely linked. When you learn melodies to jazz standards, are you making that connection of how that melody relates harmonically to the chords? If not, I think you're missing a really important opportunity to truly understand the music you're playing. In the last two lessons, we've looked at the melody to It Had to Be You and the chords. And today what we're going to look at is a bit of the melody and how it relates to the chords themselves. This again aids our memory of melodies and chords, but it also helps us see the relationship between notes and chords, which has a payoff for our soloing too. If you missed the last two lessons, then you might want to start there first. Check the description for those. Now, here's the bit of the melody we're going to work with. Here's the opening two phrases to It Had to Be You. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now I'm playing those two chords because the first phrase, the chord is G major 7. The second phrase is E7. And first off, there's 1 sharp, which means the key of G major, and that's the following scale: G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So here's some steps to being able to connect chords to melody and what you need to understand and think about. First off, we want to break it down into little phrases, and I want you to take interest in the note a phrase finishes on. Let's take the first two phrases. The first phrase ends on the note F sharp against the G major 7 chord. This is the major 7th. The second phrase ends on a G sharp when the E, and then the E7 comes in, and that's the major 3rd of that chord. Now, just a side note here, every interval has a quality. A major 7 and a major 3rd have their own particular individual type of sound, and you can, through interval training and work like this, start to train your ear to the sound of them so that you can just hear, oh, that's a major 7 there, and you'll hear a song when the major 7 comes in. Oh yeah, I recognise that. Oh, that's the same interval as on the first bit of It Had to Be You. That's what a major 7 sounds like against a major chord. Or the E7 phrase, oh, that's what the 3rd sounds like. The major 3rd sounds like against a dominant chord. But you might be asking, how can I work out the interval in relation to the chord? And say that first phrase, it's a G chord and the note it finishes on an F sharp. So how we can work this out, it's about being able to work out the intervals from any note. Say from the G note, the root of our G major 7 chord. We have the major scale intervals. Take our G major scale. Notice the red note. That's the note we need in our melody at the start. It's the same note. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. 7th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then 8's back to G. And then you have the notes in between, which would give us the chromatic scale, the G chromatic scale. Root, flat 2, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, sharp 5, 6, flat 7, 7, and 8, back to root, the octave. Or sometimes I like to play it like this. And this is a good thing to know from any note, because then you can work out what interval whatever melody note is in relation to the chord. We can take this further, work out the intervals of the whole phrase, so that first phrase in relation to G major. I've labelled it as 5, 6, 5, 6, 7. Obviously you need to know your major scale for this. These notes D, E, and F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So that was the 5th, the 6th note, and the 7th note of our G major scale. This is actually more useful than D, E, F sharp. Why? Because it's transferable. If someone said, oh, I want to play It Had to Be You, oh, I can't do it in that key, I want to do it in C. Oh, if you don't know your intervals, then it's going to be hard to work that out. Whereas if you know it's going 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, and you know your major scale, you find your C major scale and you can find it. Take the key of C major, G's the 5th, A's the 6th, B's the 7th. Those are our notes we need. We should be able to go like this. Where the 5th is a G, the 6th is an A, and the B is the 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to root. So knowing this makes it much easier to play in other keys. It also illustrates the importance of knowing your intervals and your major scales. And one thing that definitely sits behind most jazz musicians is a solid understanding of the major scale in every key and of intervals. Personally, I don't feel necessarily the need to work out the interval of every note. That could be time consuming with, busy melodies, but either the start note of a phrase or the end note of a phrase. As I said, the end notes feel like the important ones to me, particularly later on at the song. Let's look at the kind of very end of the song and you'll see what I mean. Take the first phrase, lands on an E when the chord is C6. E's a 3rd of that chord. The next phrase in the second bar finishes on an A when the chord is F. F9, A is the third of that chord too. The third bar phrase lands on a D, which is the fifth of the G major 7 chord that it lands on, and then the final phrase in that line lands on a G, which is the third of the next chord, E minor 7. Then we land on a third for the D7, and again, and then this last phrase finishes on a G when the chord's G major 7. When that phrase comes along with that C major 7, to me, it always feels like a very big part of the song. It's like the climax of the song. So, you know, I want to make sure I get that target note there. Da, 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 that last note. As we just saw there was a lot of targeting thirds, which again reinforces all this idea of playing with chord tones. And because when you're soloing, it's no different to playing a melody in the sense that you're trying to play a melody. It's just an improvised melody. So, you know, let the melodies teach you how to put notes over chords. As simple as that. Again, I challenge you to try this with either songs you already know or the next melody you learn. Just try not to just play it, but understand it intervallically. Like, oh yeah, they target that note there. He's, you know, he or she's targeting the third there. Or I really like it there where they start on the ninth, because that's an interesting note to target. More interesting than say a root or a third. Or if you listen to a song and you particularly love the way the melody sounds at that point, find out why. It would be because of an interval, and it would be because of that interval sounds really interesting against that chord. And having reference points is so important. Now, I put tab in this video to make it accessible, but really you want to try to think in notes and intervals. That's really important, because those intervals are transferable to other keys. And also the sound of them is transferable. So you could think of, you know, really being able to connect chords to melody, different stages. Number one, first off, you can play those chords and the melody to that tune. And the second thing is you start to make those connections and make understandings of how those two things link together, particularly like say the last note or the first note of phrases. And then the third thing is you're able to apply that. So like I said, trying to do it in another key, that's a really important thing eventually to get onto. It's like pick a standard you know well and go, right, I'm just going to do it in another key and let's see how this goes. It's a really good test and really good practice. If you've missed my videos on It Had To Be You so far, I'll put those both up on the screen. Thanks ever so much for tuning in. Let me know if you've got any questions, any comments. Don't forget PDF link in the description below. Jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and Saturday. Until next time, you take care.